Ready.
Okay, Parshas Vayigash. Let's see what we can figure out on Parshas Vayigash. Vayigash Elov Yehuda. Yehuda is now approaching Yosef. Why Yehuda? Because Yehuda is the Melech. He's the king designated of the brothers. But more importantly, he took responsibility for Binyamin. He was the one who said, I will take responsibility. To his father, he promised. Now, it's interesting that this week's Parsha is a continuation of last week. Last week was like a cliffhanger. The cup is found in Binyamin's bag. The brothers are brought back to Mitzrayim. The brothers say we're prepared to be slaves to Yosef, to Paro. And Yosef says, no, only the person who found the cup in his bag, he's the only one. The rest of you can go home. And that's where we end. And a whole week later, we continue the story. So the Zohar HaKodesh brings down that in life, there are many, many situations that come up that you don't know what to do. It's very frustrating. And the best advice a rabbi might give you or a therapist might give you is, let's sit on it. Let's wait a week and see what happens. Sometimes what seems hopeless today, tomorrow your systems kick in and you come up with 5 different suggestions. Hi. So the best advice very often is give it some time. Wait a day, wait a few days. I have people call me up, they're frustrated, they want a divorce, right away. And I say to them, I'm not available, let's talk about it again in a few days. In a few days I speak to them, everything's fine. It's just the way the nature of human nature is what it is. And the way the world functions the way it is. So the Zohar says that that's why we wait a little bit of time. We know, for example, he brings down that when we say Shema, we close our eyes. When we say Kriyat Shema, we put our hands over our eyes, we close our eyes. Because Shema means Hashem runs the world. So what do? We close our eyes. So we're not trying to figure out the solutions. Let God figure out the solutions. We don't have to see all the situations. It's not always clear. You can wait a day, you can wait a week, and we can get it clear. Okay, so Yehuda comes before Yosef. Now, we have to understand that everything is progressing on a particular timetable. At this point, whose timetable? Yosef's. What does Yosef want? So most people say, wow, Yosef wants to put Binyamin in danger, and he wants to see if the brothers are going to stand up for him or not stand up for him.
If they change or not.
If they changed, right? You want to see if they changed. Now, that's not the real answer. Because how did the brothers do on that test? Okay, well, let me tell you what the Medrash says. They found the cup in Binyamin's bag. There's no videotape to look at. There's no instant replay. He's caught, what we say in English, red-handed. So the brothers go to Binyamin and they smack him across the face. And they say to him, you're a thief.
Your mother.
And your mother was a thief. And you're just like your mother. It must be in your DNA. So they didn't right away jump up and say, can't be, he was framed. They didn't say that. Because they didn't think like that. And why would they suspect that he was framed? And the cup was found in his bag. You know, it was there. You know, a kid says, I didn't take it, but the watch is in his pocket. So what happened? How did it get there? How did it get into your pocket?
They even didn't let him say, I didn't do it.
Right, they didn't even give him a chance. They jumped on him. So that was not Yosef's purpose. Because if that was the purpose, they failed. They failed. They weren't successful. Yosef's purpose was, he had dreams. He wanted the dreams to come true. The first dream was that the 11 brothers bowed to him. Accomplished. The next dream is that the 11 brothers with the sun and the moon bow to him. Who's the son of the moon? His father. And his mother is gone, but maybe Bilhah. That's his agenda. He wants to keep Binyamin here. He wants to send everybody back with the instructions, bring your father here. Okay? So Yosef has an agenda. The agenda is simple. I'm following a plan. The plan is the dreams. Vayigash Elov Yehuda, Yehuda comes in and says, I don't know who you are. I'm going to speak to you really tough. You're just like Paro. which means I respect you, but I'm going to kill you. I mean, it really is a funny thing. I mean, if you look at it, Yosef comes and says to him, you're a wonderful person, I really respect you, and you're very authoritative, but if you don't do what I say, if you don't listen to what I'm going to say, I'm going to have to kill you. But I like you, you're a nice guy, I'm just going to have to kill you. I mean, it's just nothing personal. It's business, so that's what it sounds like. And he basically says, I don't know what your agenda is, but I have my own agenda. And I'm going to hijack the negotiations, and we're going to follow my agenda.
Who says Yehuda?
That's how Yehuda really talks to Yosef. And you have to understand, there's more a medrash than anything else. And it says that the book of Bereshis is known as Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation. And it makes sense. Parshas Bereshis, creation of the world. 10 generations, they don't do so well. Get the Noach. Noach is restart. Destroy the world, restart the world. 10 generations to Avraham. So now we have the introduction of the Avos. The Avos and the Imahos. The fathers and the mothers. The matriarchs and the patriarchs. That is the Yetziras HaAvos, the creation of the Avos. And we have stories. Stories of Avraham and Sarah, Yitzchak and Rivka, Yaakov, Rachel, Leah. Then comes the next transition. Dinah is taken by Shechem. They come to see Yaakov. Vayishma Yaakov. Yaakov hears the story. Vehecharish. He's quiet. At this point, it almost seems to imply the sun is setting on the Yaakov stories. He has 12 children. It's their turn to discover their nature, their character. So all of a sudden, in Parshas Vayishlach, there's a switch, a transition. And now it is the Yetzirat Hashvatim, the 12 tribes. And we go into the stories, Shimon and Levi, how they react. Reuven, mixing up the beds. Yehuda, Tamar, the whole relationship over there. Binyamin, the youngest son, things that happen with him. Yosef, the sale, the stories, the Shvatim. All of a sudden, in Parshas Vayishlach, Vayeshev, Miketz, it's all about the brothers. Very little. Yaakov is in the background. It's all about the brothers. In Shemos, we talk once more about the 12 brothers, and then we talk about the formation of Am Yisrael. So the creation, the world, Adam, Noach, the Avos, the Shvatim, Am Yisrael. So in the second dream, Yosef wants his father to come to Mitzrayim. Yehuda steps in and says, I'm the king. Yosef says, no, I'm the king. Yehuda says, you're the king of Egypt. You're a political king. I am the ruler of Am Yisrael, of the Jewish people. So I'm going to tell you how things are going to proceed. When Yaakov needed someone to set up the yeshiva, he didn't ask Yosef. He asked Yehuda. When they needed to bring a few of the brothers before Paro, Yehuda didn't choose who went. Yosef chose. That's politics. Yosef chose. When they're in Golus, and Yaakov represents Golus, who's the mother of the Jewish people in exile? Rachel. She's the one who cries for her children. Yaakov and Rachel. That's their job. The Shvatim are developing. The world is developing. Life is going on. But very significantly, it's the transition between Yaakov and the Shvatim that is what we need to understand. Now, before we get into some of the details, we need to figure out a little bit of what's happening. And some of this I'm going to tell you again next year, but let's figure this out. If someone, let's say a family member, and let's say your brother tried to kill you, punches you, gets you arrested, because of him you're in jail for 12 years, he tortures you, your life is almost over, but because you're resilient, you seem to land on your feet and you succeed in spite of your family. How do you treat your brother? How do you treat your family? I'm not suggesting that you're going to take revenge against them. You're not going to shoot them. You're not going to kill your brother, but then you go back to jail for another 30 years. You know, it's the old story of a guy on his 25th wedding anniversary. They bring out the cake. He's crying and crying and crying. So they say, "What are you crying about?"
I would be out.
He said, "When 25 years ago, I wanted to kill my wife. And I was told, if you kill your wife, you'll be 25 years in jail." He says, "Today I could have been free." You know, that's what he says. "Today I could have been free." You're not going to kill your brother. You're not going to do that. What Yosef does seems to go against all logic. Not only does he not torture his brothers, not only does he not ignore his brothers, he goes out of his way to make sure his brothers are comfortable. Let me give you an example. When he says to them, "I am Yosef," how many Egyptians are in the room? 0. Why? Why? I don't want to embarrass them in front of the Egyptians. Why not? Let him be embarrassed.
They embarrass him.
They embarrassed you. Let him be embarrassed. No, let him feel a little bit of shame. No, chas v'shalom. Then he repeats a second time. "Come closer," he says. "I am Yosef, your brother, who you sold to Egypt." So the Medrash says, when he said, "Come closer," and they all began to come closer, he wanted to tell them quietly because, the walls have ears. The Egyptians are probably listening by the walls. But one brother, Binyamin, also comes close. He says, "No, you, Binyamin, you go in the corner there. You watch the door." He didn't want Binyamin to hear that he told the brothers, "I'm the one you sold." So even though it's his brother, Binyamin, who wasn't involved, maybe he should find out the truth. I don't want to embarrass my brothers. So Binyamin is sent to watch the door, and he tells them, "I'm the Yosef who you sold." The Medrash says that in one of his conversations to Binyamin, he says, "What did you think happened to me?" He says, "Well, I heard a crazy story that some robbers came and took off your coat, and one of the robbers ran into a cave, and there was a lion, and the lion jumped and ate him and killed him and tore your coat." Yosef says, "That's exactly what happened." "How did you know?" "That's the story I heard. That's exactly what happened. It was all a lie." There's no indication that Binyamin ever found out the truth, let alone Yaakov. Then the brothers say to him, "How do we know it's you?" He says, "I have a bris milah." So the brother says, "Yeah, but everybody in Egypt we hear has a bris milah." That's true. Now, why did everybody in Egypt have a bris milah? Because Yosef said, "You want food, you got to have a bris milah."
Yeah.
So they came running to Paro. He said, "You know what this guy wants to do? He wants to do surgery on us." The guy is crazy. So Paro said to them, "You all knew that there was going to be 7 good years." They says, "Yeah, we knew." "How come you didn't save food yourself?"
Yeah.
So what was their answer? "We did save food." What happened to the food they saved? Gone. It got rotted away. The rats ate it. He says, if he can eat your food, imagine what he can do to you.
Eat you.
Right. So I would suggest
Do whatever he says.
do it. Go do the surgery. So the brother said to Yosef, hey, everybody in Egypt is circumcised. So they bring down from the Shach al Torah. Yosef says, no. My circumcision is different because I was born circumcised. He says there were 13 people who were born circumcised. Let's see how many of the list you know. The first one is Adam Arishon. Adam was born circumcised. Okay, that's fine. He wasn't born, he was created, so God created him perfect. Got it.
Yaakov.
Good guess. Yaakov is one. Yaakov makes the list.
Moshe.
After Adam Arishon, Shes. Cain and Hevel, the third child, Shes, was born circumcised. Chanoch was a big tzaddik, he was born circumcised. Who after Chanoch? Begins with letter Nun. Noach, born circumcised. After Noach, one of Noach's children, Shem, was born circumcised. The next one is a surprise. I can't explain it. Terach, Avram's father, was born circumcised. Not sure why. He became a Baal Tshuva later on, but not sure why. Yaakov, Yosef. The next one is from Sefer Shemos.
Moshe Rabbeinu.
That's right. When the mother saw he was a good child, he was born circumcised. Moshe. After that, no more in the Torah, Shmuel Hanavi. Chana davened for a special child, she got a special child. The one after that was David HaMelech. And after that they say Yeshayahu and Yirmiyahu. Okay? So Yosef says, hey, I'm circumcised. Everybody's circumcised. He says, no, I'm different. Okay. I mean, really? You're going to make all of Egypt get circumcised so when the brothers come, they should feel comfortable? Really? Why would you do that? Then it says that Yosef bought them. Bought their houses, bought their fields, bought their properties. What did he do with all the Egyptians? He moved them all around. Those who lived in L.A. moved to New York. Those who lived in New York were sent to Chicago. Those in Chicago were sent to Miami.
Why?
Why? Because now when the brothers came, everybody was strangers. Shalom Aleichem, who are you? My name is Yehuda. Where are you from? I'm from Canaan. He says, where are you from? I'm from across the country. How long have you been living here? I just got here. Say, hey, I just got here also. They were all immigrants. So nobody said, it's not like today when the migrants are coming. We don't want them in our community. Yosef made everybody migrants. So the brothers did not stand out. Everybody was strangers. Okay. These are your brothers. They tried to kill you. Given a chance, they might still try to kill you. So what are we going to do? We're going to do everybody have circumcision. You're going to move the whole country and turn everybody upside down. You're going to send all the Egyptians out in order that they shouldn't be embarrassed. Really? Really? These are the guys that tried to kill you and ruined your life and sent you to jail for 12 years. I mean, there are people that I probably would like to get even with. I don't intend to go to jail, so I have no desire to do that. But if I see them at a wedding, I don't go over and hug them and kiss them. I usually walk the other way, or I usually just leave. I just, we all, they're not even a family. These were family. So it's a very difficult thing to understand. So the Abarbanel has an approach here, of course, and other commentaries do, and we'll talk about it a little bit more next year. But let's understand it from this way. Let me give you a story with David HaMelech. David HaMelech was a tzaddik, right? Everybody, he had a tough life. Shaul HaMelech was pursuing him. David HaMelech seems to constantly be running for his life. He never got any breaks, really. It's amazing that even from the moment he was born, they started to spread rumors about him. You're not Jewish, and even if you're Jewish, you're a mamzer. And he never had a break. If he lived in the times of the internet, he'd be finished. He would never have a break. He would never succeed. His son rebels against him, Avshalom, to such a degree that David has to run for his life. He's running away from his own son who wants to kill him. On top of the mountain, there's a fellow who was one of his Rebbes and Shlomo HaMelech's Rebbe. His name is Shimi ben Gera, from the house of Shaul HaMelech. You know what Shimi ben Gera does? He takes rocks and he throws it at David HaMelech. And then he starts cursing him. He says, get out of here! You murderer! You murdered all of Shaul's family! You're a murderer! You're an adulterer! Look at all your wives! Those are the ones we know about. Who don't we know about? You're a Moavi. You're a Goy. You're a Shegetz. To'eva, you're disgusting. Klala Nimretzes. Avishai, who is Yoav's brother, one of the generals, says to David, enough. Why do I got to listen to this lowlife? I'm going to go with my sword and I'm going to cut his head off his shoulders. Because a shoulder without a head doesn't curse. Let me put an end to this miserable guy's life. He's obviously has problems. He's a psychopath. Let me take care of him. David HaMelech says, leave him alone. Leave him alone. Why? I don't need you tough guys, he says. Leave him alone. Now, in the end, David never forgave him. Please understand, he didn't forgive Shimi ben Gera. And before he died, he told Shlomo, deal with him as best you can. Shlomo gave him a chance. He says, you have to live in Yerushalayim. The guy lived for 2 years and then left, and Shlomo killed him. Shimi ben Gera was one of Shlomo Melech's Rebbes. Okay? So you have a guy on a mountain. You think he looks like some type of an oisvorf, a hooligan. He probably had a kapota with a big black hat and a long white beard, and tzitzis longer than yours. Okay? And once Shlomo Melech killed him, Shlomo Melech's life began to unravel. Had his Rebbe been alive, he may not have gotten involved with the daughter of Paro, and he may not have done the things he did. So there's a lesson here, guys. If you kill your Rebbe, it's not a good thing. just throwing that out there for you guys, Keep your rabbi happy. Don't kill the rabbi. And even if he comes once a week to give a shiur, don't kill him. Okay? Just throwing that out there for your consumption. So how does David HaMelech do that? How does one do that? So the Medrash gives an interesting example. Listen to this example. A guy takes a stick and hits a dog. Dog gets angry and attacks the stick. Now, who should the dog have attacked?
The person.
The person. The stick didn't do anything. The stick is just a stick. But the answer is, foolish dog. You bite the stick. It's not the stick that hits you. It's the person holding the stick. David HaMelech said, what do you think? You think Shimi ben Gera on the mountaintop is cursing me because he decided to curse me? He's a stick in the hands of Hashem. Obviously, there's a message here. Until I figure out the message, leave him alone. He's not important. What's important is the message. I got to figure out the message. To kill Shimi ben Gera is to kill the stick. Waste of time. Now, you should just know something. Because Shimi ben Gera lived, he had children. And his great-great-grandson was Mordechai. Mordechai ben Shimi, right? Ben Kish, Ishimini, ben Shaul. So Shimi ben Gera, the guy who's cursing David HaMelech, who we all think is some type of a low-life hooligan, his great-grandson is Mordechai, the great Mordechai and Esther in the Purim story. So there was, David HaMelech wasn't simply just talking silliness. Yosef says to the brothers, I should be angry at you. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not, I don't know. But one thing I do know, you guys are nothing. You're a stick in the hands of God. We are all pawns here. This is a game, a chess game. And we are simply pieces on the board. And God is running the world. So therefore, to be angry at you is to be angry at the stick who hit the dog. I'm not going to waste my time. That's what Joseph said. And to live your life like that is an amazing thing. Not an easy thing to do. Because most of us couldn't do that. But to live your life any differently means you don't believe in God the way you should. So Yosef over and over says, you didn't send me here, God sent me here. There was a plan. You notice though, Rav Moshe Feinstein brings this out, he never ever forgave the brothers. He never says to the brothers, I forgive you. The fact that you're the stick that does all these bad things, you have to ask yourself, why did Hashem use you as the stick? The fact that he used you is also a problem, he says. You have to understand why he used you. But you have to understand that it was a stick. Okay. It says as follows in the Torah. It says, Yehuda lets something slip. Very interesting. Yehuda gives a speech, and he lets something slip. He says that our father told us to go back down to Mitzrayim. He says we can't go back without Binyamin. So your father said to us as follows. This is what Yehuda says. My father said to us, I had 2 children from Rachel. One is not here. They tell me, Taraf. He was ripped apart. He's dead. And I still haven't seen him. Now, Nobody talks that way if you believe the person is dead. That means if, God forbid, a person dies and you go to the funeral, and a year later, after the year is up, if someone goes over and he says, I'm sorry to hear your father died, he says, yeah, he died, and I still haven't seen him. No one says that. Of course you haven't seen him, he died. The fact that Yaakov says, I hear he was torn and ripped apart, but I haven't seen him, what did that send a message to Yosef? That his father really believes he's alive. So, why? Why does Yaakov feel that way? So they give some very interesting answers. One answer is, I told you, the Ktonis Pasim, this coat of many colors, was a protection against wild animals. So he didn't buy the story that he got ripped apart. Remember, we talked about the wolf and everything else. The next thing is, after 12 months, usually a person gets over the death of a relative. It's 22 years and it's like it happened yesterday. It's not normal. When things are not normal, Yaakov takes notice. The third thing is, he had the dreams. But Aviv Shomar Tadover, Yaakov remembered the dreams. He kept them in the back of his mind. Because he knew those dreams were real. So he says, I have visions that were dreams. My son had dreams, Nevuah. Nevuah doesn't get ripped apart by a lion or a wolf or whatever. The dreams. The Chassam Sofer gives a fascinating answer. The Chassam Sofer says that in the Gemara you have many, many times great people who died, but they left things undone in this world. There were some odds and ends that needed to be tied up. What did they do? They came back to their student in a dream and told them what to do. So Yaakov says, 22 years Yosef is dead, and I have questions, and I've never seen him once in a dream. There's only one reason I haven't seen him, because he's not in heaven. He can't come to me in a dream unless he's dead. So the fact that I haven't seen him in a dream, that means Yaakov probably had visions of his father, his grandfather, people spoke to him who had died. Moshe, these people saw things. The fact that Yaakov never saw Yosef in a dream says one thing: the guy is in this world, he's not up there. That's what the Chassam Sofer says. He brings down something else. He says that there's a wild animal called the bardalis. And the bardalis, when he bites you, doesn't kill you, but drives you mad. It's almost like a rabies. So Yaakov says, Tarof Taraf, maybe Yosef is mad. Maybe he's, he got bitten by this animal, and therefore he doesn't know who he is. He has amnesia. So I haven't seen him. We're gonna try to find him. So there are many, many different things and many different possibilities as to where Yosef is and why Yosef is not here. But whatever it is, Yaakov Avinu seemed to imply that I believe he's alive. And Yehuda implied that our father believes he's alive. But Yehuda was making a message here. And the message was that I am in control. Whatever your agenda is, I'm changing the rules. Whatever's going on has to stop now. You want Binyamin as a slave? I'm much stronger than him. If it's work you want, let me do the work. You don't want the work? No, then he's coming home with us. He's not going to stay here. He made it very, very clear. Okay. So Yosef finally reveals himself to his brothers, and they're all crying, and they're all hugging, and they're all kissing. And we talked about all the things that he did. And now Yosef says to the brothers, I want you to go, and there's another 5 years of famine. There's only been 2 so far. So we want you to bring Yaakov down. And they understood Yaakov had to come down to Mitzrayim. I guess there was some type of knowledge that this was going to happen, that they were going to be in a foreign country. And therefore, he wanted him to go. Okay. The next thing is very, very interesting. Let's see if you can figure this out. It says as follows. He gave them all foods and everything. Then he gave them gifts. What did Yosef give his brothers as a gift? Clothing. L'kulam nosan leish chalipo samos. He says, let's go shopping. And he bought them all new suits. Went down to Suit Central. Buy one, get one half off. Or buy one, get one free. And he went ahead and bought them all clothes. And for Binyamin, he bought 5 clothes. A remes to Mordechai, whatever it is. Okay. Let's go figure this out. This is the king of Egypt, the viceroy, the second in command. The brothers came to Egypt not to go shopping. right? They weren't going to Marshalls or TJ Maxx. They came for one thing, food, right? Food. Yosef says, food? No problem. I'm going to give you plenty of food. Let's go shopping. I want to buy you all new clothes. Why? Why did Yosef buy the brothers new clothes?
Don't fight.
What?
Don't fight on Tuesday.
Don't?
Tuesday, when they fight.
When they mourn.
No, just the opposite. It says, if you remember the end of last week, when Yosef planted the cup in Binyamin's bag, and they found the cup in the bag, what did all the brothers do?
Tuesday.
They tore the clothes. So who was responsible for their clothes being torn? Yosef. So he has to replace the clothes. That means, I'm trying to show you what kind of a tzaddik Yosef was. That means Yosef created a scenario where the cup was put in Binyamin's bag. When the brothers found the cup, they all tore their clothes out of Avelut for Binyamin. But it was all fake. It was a setup. So Yosef now realized I had a plan. But my plan caused all my brothers to rip their clothes. So I'm responsible. So he bought them all new clothes. It's an amazing answer. Now, everything that happens is a cycle. Why did the brothers rip their clothes? I mean, why did the brothers feel it was necessary to rip their clothes? What were they trying to be machaper for? They must have ripped someone else's clothes. Whose clothes did they rip? Yosef. So they ripped Yosef's clothes. As a consequence, they ripped their clothes. As a consequence, Yosef bought them all new clothes. It just, it's the connection. It's the chain. You gotta follow the chain. The chain is fascinating. Right. It's a fascinating chain. How one thing is connected to the other. It's how the world functions. It's an amazing chain. That means Yosef could have said to them, you ripped your clothes? Good. You ripped mine, we're even. Right? We're even. You ripped my coat, I ripped your coat. That's not what he said. He says, because you ripped my coat, you have to go through the pain of ripping your coat. But now because I caused that pain, I'm going to replace it. Who thinks like that? Yosef. Yosef is a tzaddik. We don't think that way. That's not how we think. Yeah, we would say, what comes around, what goes around, comes around,
You rip one, rip another one.
Yeah, good. How does it feel? You like it? Now you know how I felt, Come over, I'll kick you in the stomach also. I'll throw you in a pit of snakes and scorpions. Let's get the real feel over here. Let's get the real feel over here. So, there's a story, there's a famous story. I don't know if it's true. You never know if these stories are true. That Napoleon was running away from the Russians, from the Russians' army, from the Russian soldiers. And he ran into a farmhouse. And he said to the farmer, protect me, hide me, and I'll give you whatever you want. And the farmer puts him in, under the bed and covers him with a bunch of blankets. And the soldiers come in and they're looking for Napoleon, and they're kicking and pushing, and they take their knives and everything else, and they don't find him, and they leave. And Napoleon says to this farmer, when I come back to France, when I get back to Paris, you come see me, I will reward you handsomely for saving my life. Okay. Half a year later, this farmer comes to Paris, he's brought before Napoleon, and Napoleon says to him, what would you like? I want to reward you, I want to show you my thanks. What would you like? He says, I'm a poor farmer, I don't have very big expectations. He says, I just want to understand one thing. What did it feel like when you were hiding from those Russian soldiers and they were looking for you? What did it feel like? Napoleon says, you're a peasant with a peasant mind. You insult the emperor. How dare you? Throw him in the dungeon. Tomorrow we're going to execute him. And they throw him into the dungeon, and he's hanging in the dungeon, and he's no food. And the next day the soldiers take him out, and they put a bag over him, and they line up the guns, and he says, ready, and you hear the guns click, aim, and they're ready to fire. He's about to say fire, and then he goes over to the guy and takes off the bag and says, so, you know how it feels like now?
I heard this stuff.
You know how it feels like? Now you know how it feels like. You know? That's what Yosef could have done. Yosef could have said to the brothers, your clothes are torn. You know what it feels like? Now you know. Want to feel some more? I'll show you some more stuff. He doesn't do that. It's an amazing thing when you think about Yosef. Okay. Perek Memvov. Yaakov Avinu says, I gotta send someone down to Goshen to start a yeshiva. That's what he says. Who does he send? Yehuda. Ves Yehuda sholach lefonov el Yosef lahoros lefonov Goshen. Rashi says lahoros letaken lo beis Talmud, to build a yeshiva. She mishom tetzei hora, that from there halacha should come out. Okay. First of all, who is going to be the Rosh Yeshiva? Who is the Torah source of Am Yisrael?
Yaakov?
Well, Yaakov was handing it over. Remember, we thought at the beginning, we said Yaakov handed it over. Levi. It says, Yoru mishpatecha Yaakov v'sonoscha Yisrael. Levi was the Rosh Yeshivas. And maybe Yisachar. Yisachar was the Chamor Goren. It's interesting. You see, Levi, it's very interesting. Levi got special treatment in Mitzrayim. They were never enslaved.
Never worked.
They didn't work. They were not slaves. Part of the reason is because the Chartumim, which remember a few weeks ago I said on a scale of 1 to 10, they were quite smart. They said whoever's going to save the Jewish people is going to come from Shevet Levi. So Paro says, okay, Shevet Levi are not going to be slaves. This way people would resent them. Everybody is working back-breaking labor, not Shevet Levi. Paro understood that if someone from Shevet Levi says, I'm going to take you out of Mitzrayim, the first thing they're going to say is, really? Take off your shirt. Let's see the scars on your back. No scars? We're not going to follow you. And the truth is, they didn't follow Moshe right away. It took a long time for them to believe in Moshe. And it needed Aaron to help them and Miriam to help them. And the only reason why they believed in Aaron and Miriam was because even though they were not slaves, but they gave of themselves to the people. Aaron served the people. Miriam helped deliver the babies. So everybody loved Aaron, everybody loved Miriam. So out of respect to Aaron and Miriam, they respected Moshe. The other answer that they give, very interesting answer, was when Yosef was accused of having the whole situation with the wife of Potiphar, there was a court. He was arrested. They wanted to kill him. Who were his judges? Not the Chartumim, the priests, the Kohanim. In those days in Egypt, the judges were the Kohanim. And they listened to Osnat, and she said, look whose clothes are torn. Not hers, his. So she must have attacked him. And therefore, they said he doesn't get put to death, he'll be thrown in jail instead. So he felt that the priests of Egypt saved his life. And Yosef was a big believer in paying his debt, Hakarat HaTov. And therefore, you saved my life, I'm going to give you food for the rest of your life, and I'm not going to touch your fields, and I'm not going to charge you any money for this. So the priests of Egypt were very well taken care of by Yosef, because he felt they saved his life. Okay, so we have to understand quid pro quo. Yosef understood that. Okay. Why did Yaakov send Yehuda? That's the question we have to understand, number one. And number two, why did Yaakov feel it was important to build a yeshiva? That means when he went to Lavan's house, did he build a yeshiva? No. And he was in Lavan's house for 22 years, 20 years. He didn't build a yeshiva. In Mitzrayim, Yaakov was only going to be alive for 17 years. He built a yeshiva. Gotta be a reason why. So, first of all, the Ponevezher Rav says that in order to build a yeshiva, you need the power of a king, of a melech. And that was Yehuda. To run the yeshiva, you needed Levi. He says they're not necessarily the same people. The person who handles the money is not necessarily the head of the yeshiva. The guy who's the head of the yeshiva has to be free not to be bothered with the money. So you need someone to take care of the money so the rabbi could be involved in the yeshiva. So, therefore, that's what they want. The other thing was, the yeshiva takes responsibility for the children. Yehuda took responsibility for Binyamin. Zalman Sorotskin says this. So Yaakov trusted Yehuda. He felt that Yehuda had that responsibility. But why now? What was it now that made the difference more than ever before? So it's very interesting. There's a pasuk in the Torah. It says in the Torah that Yaakov started to travel down to Egypt. And Hashem appeared to him. Vayomer, Anochi Okel Elokei Avicha, I am the God of your father. Al tira merda Mitzrayim, don't be afraid to go down to Egypt, because I'm going to make you to a great nation. Anochi Ered Imcha, I'm going to go with you and I'm going to come out with you. So what did Hashem say to Yaakov? You're not going to go to Egypt alone. Who's going with him? Hashem. Okay. If you know God's coming with you, you got to build a place for him. He's not going to sleep in the guest room. You're not going to put him in the basement. Where are you going to put him? Where does God sleep? He doesn't sleep. He's in a yeshiva, right? You have to build a shul. You have to build a yeshiva. The minute Yaakov heard Hashem say, I'm going with you, you're not going alone, right? The minute he heard that, he said to Yehuda, you better go down there, find a nice building that we can make into yeshiva. We got to prepare it. We're going to have company. We have a guest coming. So it's very, very interesting how he did that. Now, there's a story, interesting story. There's a story with Reb Chaim Kanievsky. You know who Reb Chaim Kanievsky is, correct? You all know who he is. He lives in Bnei Brak. So many people want to learn with him b'chavrusa. What does it mean to have a chavrusa? A study partner.
Yeah,
Okay, correct? A study partner. Now, there was a particular fellow who really wanted to learn with Reb Chaim Kanievsky and kept calling him and talking to him. Please let us learn together, let us learn together, let us learn together. So Chaim Kanievsky finally gave in. He says, okay, we'll learn half an hour a day, but understand my rules. Rule number 1, don't be late. Okay? Okay? It's not Jewish time. We're going to learn from 8:30 to 9, you got to be on time. That's rule number 1. Rule number 2, don't miss. I want to know that at 8:30 you're there, not your excuses. So the guy says, well, I got to be honest with you, he says. The last few years, I got the flu. And it knocked me out for a week. And I took the flu shot didn't help. So if I get the flu, you can't hold me responsible. So Reb Chaim Kanievsky said to him, if you come every day and you come on time, you don't need a flu shot. You'll be fine. You're not going to get the flu. Okay? Having a Seder with Reb Chaim Kanievsky is better than a flu shot. They should put that at CVS. Learn Torah with an important rabbi every day and don't miss, better than a flu shot. And he came and he was well. It's November, December, January, February, March. One day he missed. He had to go somewhere, he had an appointment, whatever the excuse was. Didn't make a difference. He missed. A week later, guess what he got?
Flu.
You got it. A week later, he got the flu. So, it's interesting, when you study with Reb Chaim Kanievsky, it's better than a flu shot. But when you break the rules, you break the rules. Yosef sent a whole bunch of presents to his father. The Medrash Rabbi in Bamidbar Rabbah, Perek Yud Zayin, Mishnah Aleph, or the Medrash Aleph, Perek Aleph says that a son or a child should give gifts to their father. Why? It's part of Kibud Av V'Eim. How do we know this? We learned it from Yosef, that for 22 years he didn't send any gifts to his father. Now, when it came time to send gifts to his father, he sent a whole bunch of gifts to make up for 22 years. So you see from here it says that there is a mitzvah to buy your father presents. And where does the mitzvah come from? It's part of Kibud Av V'Eim. Okay? So all of you remember that. Next question. It says that Yosef gathered all the money in Egypt. The Gemara in Sanhedrin says he buried 3 treasures. Right? 3 treasures he hid. Who found the first treasure? Korach. Korach, the Sefer Ben Yehoyada. Okay? Who's the author of the Sefer Ben? The Ben Ish Chai. Ben Yehoyada. It says that he hid 3 treasures. The first one was money from people who worshipped idols. It was horrible money. It was treif money. Korach found that. So that corrupted him. The second one was from people who didn't worship idols, but they weren't all that honest. That treasure was found by Antoninus, Rabbi's good friend, the Roman Caesar. The third one was kosher money. Money from people who earned the money honestly, and it was not used for Avodah Zarah, and that treasure has yet to be found. It's going to be, it's osti lavo, it's hidden away for the future, for the tzaddikim of the future. Okay. Yosef died at the age of 110. He was the youngest of all the brothers. He died first. They ask why. So the Targum Yonasan ben Uziel says, because when Yaakov came to Yosef, he bowed before him. And he should have told his father, you don't have to bow. Now, how did he know that his father was going to bow? He didn't. But he should have sent a messenger to his father saying, please, Dad, don't bow to me. So because he bowed to him, that was one of the reasons. The other reason is, the Gemara says, that he occupied himself with Rabbonis. When you take political jobs, it shortens your life. You know, on the 1010 News a few days ago, I was listening to the radio, they made a study. They looked at how long people who run for president live and people who are president. And they say people who have been the president of the United States have died 11 years earlier than people who ran for president and lost. So they said that everybody who runs for president and loses, you're not a loser. You're going to live longer than the president. That's what the 1010 News says. So it supports the Gemara. The Gemara says, Rabbonis. And of course, the third reason we know that he heard 5 times, your servant, our father, and it was repeated 5 times, he heard it in Hebrew, then he heard it again in Egyptian, and therefore he heard it twice, and that's why it happened that way. What?
So he lost 10
How
years.
many years he was supposed to live?
Well, he should have lived to be 120, and he lived to be 110. The same story can be said about Yehoshua. Yehoshua was supposed to live to be 120 like Moshe. But because he delayed conquering and dividing Eretz Yisrael, he lost 10 years of his life.
Because what?
He knew that after he conquers and divides Israel, he was going to die. So he schlepped and schlepped. He took a long time, thinking he would live longer. So he died before his time, and therefore a lot of Israel was not conquered. So he lost 10 years of his life, Yehoshua. He should have lived to be 120, lived to be 110. You know? And living that long is unusual. Shmuel HaNavi lived to be 52. Shlomo HaMelech lived to be 52. David, who was old, the Navi says, was 70. You know, most people in those days didn't live longer than 30 or 40 years old. You know, they were very young, men and women. You know, just recently that people are living longer. It wasn't then, they didn't live that long. Okay, it's time to go. I have people coming to see me. One last question. Listen to this question that they asked Rav Zilberstein. A guy comes into a store, let's say a suit store. We're talking about suits. Guy comes into a suit store. And the salesman is there, and he says, I want to buy 2 suits. Okay. The salesman knows he was just in a meeting with the boss. And the boss told him, this is Thursday, the boss told him on Sunday we're going to have a sale, it's going to be in all the newspapers, buy 1 suit, get 1 free. Now the guy is in the store, he wants to buy 2 suits.
Thursday.
It's Thursday. Should he tell the guy, come Sunday, because we're going to have a special, buy 1, get 1 free? Or it's forbidden for him to do that because his boss, he's just an employee, is going to lose money. Maybe he won't come back at all. It's not his job to tell the people what's going to happen Sunday. Maybe his responsibility is to show him 2 suits and sell him 2 suits. There'll be a sale? Okay, that's not my problem. You know, CVS has sales all the time. They don't tell you on Thursday what the sale's going to be on Friday. You can go online, but they don't know. What's the rule? What's the halacha? They asked Rabbi Zilberstein, does he have to tell the guy that a sale is coming up? So Rabbi Zilberstein says as follows. He says, first of all, if the guy who's in the store is a Talmud Chacham, you have to tell him. Because you have a responsibility to serve a Talmud Chacham in his best interest. If the guy is a relative of yours, you have to tell him. Because you have a responsibility to your family, to make sure your family's needs are taken care of. Otherwise, he says, if he's not a Talmud Chacham and he's not your family, you may not have to tell him. I don't know if it's forbidden to tell him. I don't know if you commit a crime by telling him, but you don't necessarily have to tell him. Would it be the right thing to tell him? I would imagine it'd be the right thing to tell him. Because, it's... now, he says, what happens if there are coupons, like by the counter there are coupons, like a paper has ad? Yeah. Well, you can give him the coupon because it's published in the paper. Just because he didn't see it, you don't have to deny him that. But it's an interesting question. It's not so simple. It's an interesting question whether you should do that or not. He says that, one last question, he says there's a guy who needed an operation. The Israeli doctor has a 95% success rate, but only does this operation once or twice a month. There's a doctor in New York who also has a 95% success rate, but does the operation every day. Since both people have the same success rate, should he do the operation in Israel or go to New York?
Yeah.
So he says you go to New York. He says, why? It's not the success rate. It's how often you do it.
Yeah. The more experience.
The more experience. He says, believe it or not, the guy who does it once or twice a month, I'm glad he's successful, but he lacks the experience. The guy who does it every single day, the experience, you never know when you need that experience. He says that's the edge. It's not the success rate, it's the experience. Experience counts. Remember that. Have a good night, everybody.
Okay.
Take care.
Thank you.